What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr Wargames, and today I am bringing you my update to Swordsoul. Now this deck actually helped me get second place at locals today. It did incredibly well against certain matchups. There's one matchup that I lost which was against Sprite, and they just went absolutely off and I was unable to kind of deal with that. The other matchups, I won the dice roll, I was able to control the game state with a couple of the engines that you'll see within the deck, and it allowed me to kind of play through certain hand traps as well. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. We're going to dive headfirst into the profile, starting off with the Swordsoul cards. So all of this is pretty standard from now. So triple Moyi, triple Ecclesia, triple Long One, and double Tire. Now, I'm not really going to go over these in too much depth because they are pretty self-explanatory. Unfortunately, Long One has, in a sense, been power crept in the sense of the amount of burn damage it can do. Like, it starts off with something like Sparks at 50 life points, it then goes to Cowboy at 800, Long One at 12, and now we've got Heavy Borger at 15. But nonetheless, that 1200 off the Long One is game winning. On to the tennies, we do play triple Ashuna, triple Adhara, double Vishuddha, and the one Shifana. Some builds don't play Shifana, some builds only play 2 Adhara. For this one, it actually worked out really importantly that I was playing 3 Adhara because I was also playing the Yang Xing engine. But the idea behind this is Vishuddha's just such an incredibly powerful card going second, but going first, it just acts like a normal Tenyi. It does help that it is dark because that will help you unlock your other engine in the deck that I'll show you in a little bit. And the idea is that it just gives you the ability to set up a board with some defensive qualities and graveyard recursion and everything else you need. For the Yang Xing engine, I was still playing the 1 Chuin, the 1 Bian, and the 1 9 Pillars. Now, this is a bit of a give and take. It all comes down to personal preference. If you don't like playing this, you can take this out if you want to. Heck, you could even take out the Denglong plate as well completely, and then that's when you can start adding in more synchros. That's probably the biggest issue with the deck, is that the extra deck is quite tight. But the idea behind this was if I was going first, there was next to no way my opponent was dealing with a Pillars plus going into a Herald that couldn't be destroyed by battle. That backed up with everything else I needed was so good, and it also just caused them so many issues because if they were trying to kaiju my cards, I was giving up Barons with Chijiaos, with Denglongs, and it's like, well, you're not breaking that with one kaiju. So they had to kind of make their choice. Did they try and deal with the counter trap? Did they try and deal with the Omni Negate in the Baron? And did they try and deal with the Negate of the Chijiao? Not to mention the hand traps or any other backup that I had. So I really like this. Obviously, there is a downside. Like, if you go second, this engine can pretty much be near useless. The benefit you have that these are still both worms, so they're both revealable and banishable through Tires, Long Ones, and Moyis. But then this becomes completely dead. And it's one of the ones that when you're going second, it's the easiest free card you can side out. Like, okay, cool, I want to put in board breakers. So 1, 2, 3, that's your evenly matches, or lightning storms, or thrusts, or anything that you particularly play. So it worked out very, very well, but I can see the downside in it. Then for the hand traps, we were playing triple Ash Blossom. I was still on Small World, so I am still playing the Thunder King, the Kaiju. And the reason for that is it's just, even without Gamma around in the format anymore, it's very rare that your opponent stops Small World because they don't expect the Kaiju. And the idea is that as soon as I activate Small World, whether I'm up against Rise Heart Pass, which needs a Kaiju to out it, whether I'm up against Dragoon in Branded, whether I'm up against any kind of like boss monster, town monsters, or anything like that, Small World is my way to do it. And the fact that I can get to this so many different ways is really important. I have, spoiler, cut the 100 Dragon Apples. This has now gone completely from the build because I was taking in a lot of kind of feedback on what people were saying, and I do agree. It is pretty much a win more card. It's really, really good and very, very powerful, but it is just win more. It's push you that extra level, push you that extra step in order to kind of get to where you need to go. And I felt that it wasn't hugely necessary. So what did I put in instead? Well, instead, I actually put in a small Super Heavy Samurai engine, and my God, did this put in a heck of a lot of work. Now, the other card I was playing was the 1 Soul Gaia Booster, and the reason I was playing this instead of Piercer is I didn't want to use my normal summon on the engine. So I was taking inspiration from the previous Super Heavy Samurai build that was suggested to me, and the way that I kind of looked at it was, arguably you could play 3 Bike and 1 Wakashi if you really wanted to shrink the engine down a bit. And if you wanted to make it the absolute base minimum, you'd cut the bites completely and just play the 3 Wakashi and the 1 Soul Gaia. But the idea behind all of this was literally if I opened up Bike, that was it. That gave me full combo off of 1 card into Baron. So it would put my opponent in a position where they were right, okay, you need to Nibiru me now, or I've got Baron protection and I haven't even used my normal summon, and it's all come from like 1.5 cards. So arguably Wakashi could be at 1. But the way I kind of saw it was, okay, well, if I don't see Bike and I just see Wakashi, that's still a level 8 synchro. That's still giving me, obviously, selected level 8 synchros, but that still gives me ways to either climb higher or it gives me ways to literally just go, okay, cool. Special summon at Hara. Hara and Soul Gaia booster, get there eventually. That's Denglong. So I've got ways to get to it. And it just worked out really, really nicely. Like, I might play around with the ratios a bit more, see what happens when I just go with 3 Wakashi, see what happens when I go with 3 Bike. Like, ideally, you want to get to Bike, and I know the first kind of criticism is going to be, well, what happens if you've got a spell in the grave? Well, that's the interesting part, because when you have a spell in the grave, that's when you're going to have to start changing up your strategy. All you then need to do is add in Ghost Bell, and then you've got a bridge between Small World to use Motorbike to Ghost Bell to Adhara, and kind of work ways back that way as well. Actually, I don't think it can get directly to Adhara, but the idea is that you would adapt your plays in order to kind of make the bridges work. For me, I didn't even need to look at that as of yet. It just kind of did its job and did everything I needed it to do. It's definitely down to personal preference. If you don't like it at all, by all means cut it. But it was the fact that it was just such low investment into such high reward that it was definitely worth doing. And not to mention that once you set up your scales, from that point on, you don't care if you've opened up Mogi and Taya. Like, you're good to still rock and roll. And what I'm trying to say is you put your opponent in a position where it's like, right, okay, well, I'm going to get Baron. If you Nibiru me now, I still have a Pendulum summon available to me, plus my normal summon. Like, it's just causing so many issues. And it's like, right, okay, well, Wakashi, you need to stop this now. Or Bike, you need to stop that now. Yes, it did become a little bit of a pain in the backside with Droll rolling around, but luckily I didn't face that today. Moving on to the spells, which we do play a much more reduced lineup, is Triple Emergence alongside Double Circle, 1 Cycle, 1 Summit, and then 2 Blackouts. I'm still on the 2 Blackouts. Yes, this is a 44 card deck. The reason I'm still on the 2 Blackouts is, as you've seen in the combos that I've done previously, banishing Blackout to spawn a token, not only does it catch a few people off guard, but it also allows you to play around and through Droll. The Blackout is incredibly powerful as well. If you can end on it, it's going to cause your opponent even more issues, because just being able to go, okay, cool, Blackout, pop 1, sack 2 is very, very important. And then if you're adding to loop that off with your Chi Zhao as well, or your Chen Ying, you're just putting yourself in an even stronger position and gaining an advantage with a balance of back row and front row. So that's it for the list. Moving on to the extra deck. Now, the extra deck going from 10s and downs, we were playing the one Queenling long one, I always get it wrong, so, you know, Baron de Fleur, and of course the Chen Ying. I have cut Chaos Angel. I feel that Chaos Angel is less consistent without the 100 Dragon Apple. It's still a good card, but my focus was the fact that I couldn't get into the Chaos Angel off of the Super Heavy Samurai route, but I could get into Baron. Chao Feng was like a mini MVP. The fact that I was constantly locking my opponent out of lights was really, really important. Now, obviously, in some matchups, darks are just a little bit better. But going for Chao Feng gave me 2 routes to be able to protect from Nibiru. Now, I know some locals are cutting it completely. Some higher up events are cutting it completely as well. Nibiru, that is. So if you're not worried about Nibiru or you feel that it's all being cut, then again, this opens up space for something else. Shen Shen was another mini MVP. The pure fact that, again, not a lot of people were expecting this, and then when you're able to summon it down, it was causing so many issues. Another card to consider is White Aura Whale, but for me, I kind of went with a balance of defensive options, because like being able to go first and then being able to kind of set up either Shen Shen play, Denglong play, you name it, it really did cause issues. For the 8s, we've got the 1 Draco Berserker, we've got the Axel. So Axel is obviously what instigates the low investment off of the back of the Wakashi in order to get into Baron. Yes, it is relatively a dead space. Yes, you could put in Stardust Warrior if you are truly worried about, not Stardust Warrior, sorry, Stardust Dragon itself if you are truly worried about a Nibiru. But I kind of cut it to a minimum. Like I said, the extra is probably the one thing that will give you the most headaches, because you have to cut down cards you don't really want to. Speaking of which, one card that was cut down that ultimately want to, but had to find the space, was Baxia and Yazi. Like, I cut Yazi completely. I'm still a little bit on the fence as to whether or not that is the case, and I still want it to be, but I am highly considering putting Yazi back in. But Baxia, again, is incredibly powerful. Like, the fact is a target spin back, it can revive from the graveyard, you name it. 2 Yugioh, obviously all pretty straightforward and simple on that one. And then we've got the 1 Denglong, the 1 Herald, the 1 Shaman, the Tenyi, and the double Monk. I feel, as much as I would like to cut these, if you're still playing the Tenyis, you still need to play them. Shaman, it could arguably be cut if you wanted to, but again, you kind of want it and not need it than need it and not have it. And I feel that it's more reliable to have something like, or more required to have something like this if you're playing the Tenyis than it is if you're playing Yazi or Chaos Angel. So, but again, it all comes down to personal preference, creative ideas, kind of shuffling it up. This is not like, this is the only way to play Sword Souls, and you have to play it this way, otherwise you're a scrub kind of thing. It is, here is a creative idea, here's something a little bit different. I've tried to modernize it post-ban list. I've tried to keep it in mind for other future updates as well when we get the new cards in Battles of Legend. Not so much for this deck, but other decks are going to be able to use cards from the Battles of Legend and cause issues. The deck needs to be able to adapt and still compete, and that's where stuff like, you need to be aware of Shifter. That's why Rivalry can actually be incredibly good in the deck as well, cause your opponents a huge amounts of issue. I feel that having the main deck of the Kaiju is a cool balance, but again, I also understand the feedback on that in the sense of, well, maybe we need to be looking at more hand traps. And I just kind of, I would rather play a deck that goes, you know what, I'm just going to try and play for as many hand traps as possible, rather than clogging my deck down with multiple hand traps. Considering a deck like this as well needs like 1 or 2 cards to go off. Like, there's not one card on its own that gets you a built board without having to reveal a worm, banish a worm, summon a Tenyi, you name it. So, apart from Wakashi, actually, I tell you about Wakashi. Very good, very good. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has given you a couple of ideas in your own build. By all means, clone the deck if you want to, test it out, see how it works for you. If it's not working for you, then by all means, you do have other options. Use this as like a stepping block to kind of get you an idea of like, okay, well, technically the Swordsoul engine is quite cheap. Not Swordsoul, Super Heavy Samurai engine is quite cheap. And the Axel took a bit of a dip due to the recent ban list and Super Heavies not being as dominant. Maybe it's time to look into it and possibly pick it up. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. But for now, as absolutely always, stay safe. And of course, happy dueling.